All right, everybody, you saw the title. I want you to grab your swords, your armor, and your Gatorade, because we're talking about Yonko slaying today. I just spit all over my keyboard. I don't know if you saw that on camera, but it just... Oh, God, I gotta clean that up now. That's disgusting. Okay, I also had to switch out the poster in the background. Hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking and Barry, Slayer of Gods, Destroyer of Worlds, back again. And yes, in today's video, we're going to be talking about how you, that's right, you, slay a Yonko. I mean, you better get ready. I mean, I don't have to fight a Yonko, but you have to now, so you better hit the gym, you better train, alright? For most of us, I think that you'd probably be just done right there. But hey, who knows? Maybe somebody's out there like, you know what, Tekking? I think if I hit the gym, if I work on my sword skills, I think I could take Shanks. It's like, all right, I'll show up at your fight. I'll probably bet against you, but I'll show up to your fight, be like, yeah, okay. So, not just the Yonko in One Piece, though, but I really want to talk about this in, like, a general sense. All right, the idea of, and it's really a hurdle for the author, and it's not just with manga, but any work of fiction, the idea of, like, okay, we're getting to the end of the story, the end of the manga, the end of the comic book, or whatever. And now we have the main villain, the big bad, up against the hero, the main character, all right? That really makes or breaks how an author could tell a dynamic, compelling story that lives up to expectations. And that's the key word you need to understand right here, expectations, all right? Because there's a little bit of a meta problem here, and I think most people are aware of this. Okay, let me just walk you through this really quick. Oda, let's just use One Piece for an example, Oda creates the Yonko, and we established the Yonko way back during the middle of the first part of One Piece, during Enies Lobby. Right after that, Garp explains the Yonko, and it's like, these are the 4 strongest pirates that are active in the New World, and also the 4 strongest characters, you know, with some contention there, in the entire One Piece world, right? With Kaido being referred to as, you know, the strongest being, the strongest monster, you know, it was announced during his introduction, you know, if it's one-on-one, Kaido wins. Or another translation of that I've seen is, if it's one-on-one, always bet on Kaido. Something of that nature. Even Big Mom, you know, when Luffy was fighting Big Mom at Totland, Big Mom called Kaido, like, a monster, you know, like, it's like, mama, I might be strong, but Kaido, that thing, he's a monster. Kind of implying right there that Big Mom is even not really sure, and she's really confident in her own abilities, but, like, even if it went up into a straight fight between Big Mom and Kaido, which we kind of saw earlier in Wano, Big Mom's not entirely sure that she would be able to win, right? So the idea is, like, Kaido is insanely powerful, okay? So Oda, as an author, creates Kaido as this ridiculously powerful character. And it's like, okay, well, the main characters and Luffy, the hero of One Piece, are going to have to go up against Kaido and win. All right? Now, that sets a very high bar for expectations, all right? And so this can either go one way or another way. And by the way, no matter what you do, there's going to be people that are going to be upset, right? Like, that's just going to happen no matter what. But you have to understand, like, okay, I can't have Kaido defeated too easily, because then all the hype, all that tension is going to be just thrown out the window. As an example of this, let me just throw this out here. I'm going to use a Fairy Tail example, which I know it's kind of an easy target, but let's just go ahead with it. Remember that arc in Fairy Tail where they were going up against that evil cult that were trying to summon a war god? It was like that little mini arc, like right after the time skip, right? And so the arc concludes with the cult succeeding, and they sacrifice their own members, and they literally summon, like, a straight-up war deity. Like, he's a war god from the Fairy Tail universe, gets summoned, and he's like this giant, imposing, like, titan. He's got these huge horns. He has this giant sword that's, like, the size of a mountain. He swings it. It, like, creates earthquakes in his wake, right? And it's like, wow, that's insane. Natsu jumps up on this thing and punches it 2 times, and its head just explodes. I think it's a little bit too early in the video to use an F-bomb yet. I'll maybe save that for later in the video. He just, like, punches it once, bam, and they're like, that'll never work. And he's like, all right, let me punch it harder this time. Let me put my back into it this time. Boom, and then its head just blows up and it dies. And I don't know if, like, in that moment in the story, Mashima was expecting, you know, the fan base to react like, wow, Natsu's crazy powerful now. He's, like, 2-shotting gods in the face. I don't know if that was supposed to be the reaction, but I remember my reaction to that, and my reaction to that was, wow, gods in Fairy Tail really suck. Man, he's a war god in Fairy Tail. Two shot by a mortal. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That just speaks more for the gods in Fairy Tail rather than you know, the mortals or whatever. Okay. So, you can't do something like that. You can't have Kaido hyped up this much and then Luffy shows up and like, alright, I'm gonna punch you once, bam! And Kaido's like, that didn't hurt. And Luffy's like, alright, well try this. Gear 4th, King Kong gun, bam! And he's like, just takes out Kaido and Luffy's like, yeah! But it also creates a meta problem because we, as the fans, reading One Piece, are like, obviously, Luffy's going to win. Obviously, Kaido will fall. Obviously, Luffy will live. Obviously, Luffy will make it to the end of the New World, find Laugh Tale, find the One Piece, become the king of the pirates, right? We all know this. Like, the main character of your manga is not going to straight up die, all right? And it's not even like a situation with Dragon Ball where we introduce, like, the other world and, like, a dimension beyond death where the characters can like, the main character can die. Like, Goku dies, and then he goes to Otherworld and just trains with Pikkon. Was Pikkon canon? I don't think he was. Whatever, he was cool enough. Pikkon, and training with him and just getting stronger or whatever, and then he can gather the Dragon Balls and come back later, right? Okay? We don't have anything like that in One Piece. When characters die in One Piece, they stay dead. Cut to Brook just watching this on his iPad, just like, oh. You know, but no, seriously, like, okay, there is an afterlife in One Piece, and you can come back through, like, the Yomi Yomi no Mi. That's, like, one exception, though, all right? If Luffy were to straight up die, he's dead, right? Luffy's not coming back, right? If Luffy's body was just completely obliterated, you know, we're not going to cut to, like, the other world where Luffy's training with other heroes throughout history. You know, Luffy's not going to come back as a ghost and be like, I will be the king of the ghost pirates! Yarg! Ooh! Although Luffy as a ghost would be pretty funny. He would just haunt the rest of the Straw Hats, and it would just be really hilarious. But no. Like, obviously, Luffy's not going to die. He's going to beat Kaido, all right? So we know that going into this as a fan base, and I think Oda is aware that we know that going into this as a fan base. So here's the dynamic. This is why it makes it difficult for expectations. It's like, all right, I've established Kaido as this crazy powerful force, and the Straw Hats have to go up against him, and they have to win because everybody knows they're going to win, but I have to still make it intense. I have to still make it a very compelling fight, a compelling story. Even though we kind of know the outcome, it's sort of like we have to enjoy the ride to the outcome, all right? And this is what I think trips a lot of authors up, because beyond just manga, I've seen this so many times where the dynamic of how the main character defeats a big bad is sometimes really rushed, or it doesn't make sense, or it just feels like not deserved. Like, there's been plenty of times throughout, you know, all the manga and anime I've read where it's like, okay, let's say the main character, the hero, fights against the big bad at the beginning of the story arc as kind of like a taste for their power. And the main character just gets completely one-shot, like one-sided fight, not a big deal. It's like, you know, bam, I beat you, you know, you get stronger or whatever. And then the main character gets back up, and, like, you go through the entire story arc where they heal, and they recover, and then they, you know, go throughout maybe a slog of some, you know, weaker villains, and then, like, you know, I beat 2 of your underlings, and now I'm back for a rematch. And then all of a sudden, even though not a lot of time has passed, there really wasn't much of a training arc, or if there was a training arc, it wasn't much of a training arc. All of a sudden, it's like, yeah, I know at the beginning of the arc you beat my ass, and it was completely one-sided, but I've defeated 2 of your underlings and trained for a couple of days, so now I can take you on, you know, like, yeah, right? I mean, like, I've seen that before, you've probably seen that before, and it's just, sometimes it just feels like the main character has to beat the villain because the arc has to be over now. Like, I think we've all encountered that at some point, you know, let me know down below some examples of that. But, and, you know, I'm not just using Fairy Tail here, there are other examples, but, like, okay, so in the case with One Piece right now, I think it's very clear Luffy could never defeat Kaido one-on-one. It's just not going to happen. Even if you cut to, like, Luffy after some training, like by the end of the story, Luffy. And I'm not talking Luffy at, like, age 40 or whatever, like, hypothetical Luffy at age 40. I'm saying, like, Luffy, like, a couple of arcs from now, who will, like, have his awakening, probably, in, like, Gear 5th, or Gear 6th, or Gear 7th, or whatever. Even with all those tools in his utility belt, still would not be able to beat Kaido in a one-on-one fight. With Kaido starting out at 100% health, Luffy starting out at 100% health, I don't think it would happen, okay? And that's one way you can get around this that I think is very effective, that I don't think a lot of authors always realize that they can do this. It's, you don't always have to have just the hero, just the main character, defeat the main villain, right? Like, the main character's allowed to have help, right? Like, going back to that war god example in Fairy Tail, if it was not just Natsu by himself KOing a war god, if it was like all of Fairy Tail comes back together and they all fight together and they have strategy and everything like that, I think that would be way more effective as like a story, right? Okay. So yeah, obviously Kaido, he fought against the Scabbards, fought against the Worst Generation, fought against Yamato, Momonosuke even got some shots in, and now Luffy. And even Luffy, Oda has done a good job at showcasing, like, okay, the first fight, like that's how he opened up Wano. We were barely 15 chapters into Wano when Luffy just decides to face Kaido. Like he's just running down the hill and he's just like, you know what, screw this. Wano's gonna be the longest arc in One Piece. I don't think so, Oda. I'm gonna finish this right now. And he just jumps up and tries to one-shot Kaido, and it just doesn't work. Kaido doesn't really take any damage from his attacks, and Luffy, of course, gets one shot. He gets Kanabo'd by Kaido, knocked out right there at the beginning of the arc, just to showcase this is not gonna work the way other fights work, where Luffy, you know, went up against Don Krieg and beat down Don Krieg, or Crocodile, like whatever. Luffy could have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He could have 20, 30 rounds against Kaido. Kaido, I think, is going to win every single time, just by himself with no other factors involved here, okay? I think Oda clarified that pretty damn early on. Also, the fact that Kaido defeated Kid, and, you know, well, Hawkins kind of surrendered, and Apu was the, you know, he was the traitor, but, like, Killer and Kid were also, you know, beaten down by Kaido at some point, so it's like, there's just no way. They can't win, okay? You need to work together, and that's another theme of Wano that's pretty prevalent, is, like, the masses coming together and fighting against this main threat, okay? The fact that Luffy has had an army behind him, at his back, helping him and supporting him, is the only reason he was able to get this far. Seriously. Like, if that wasn't the case, when Luffy gets, well, Luffy wouldn't have made it that far anyway if the other members of the Worst Generation weren't able to fight alongside him, but when Luffy got knocked off the side of Onigashima even, and he hit the water, he would have just drowned right there if it wasn't for the Heart Pirates that were there supporting him. And then Momonosuke turned into a dragon to get him back to Onigashima. Like, you know, so Luffy's had so much support and help, and also the fact that he had a break. He had a break. Yeah, he got knocked unconscious, but he was revived by the Heart Pirates, given first aid, and then he was able to eat all that meat from Caribou. He was able to get a little bit of a break. Meanwhile, Kaido was facing off against Yamato the entire time, so Kaido didn't get as much of a break. So Luffy's like, okay, I tried to face him once, I completely got devastated. And he spent like 2 weeks or so training in Udon, lifting up giant a stone in the quarry, you know, bench pressing, you know, getting really buff, and also learning Ryuo from Hyo, but that wasn't even good enough. Oda's like, no, even that is not good enough. 2 weeks of training, lifting some heavy weights, and doing some rudimentary Ryuo training, that is not going to be even close to good enough for taking on Kaido, alright? And it wasn't. Luffy's always had Conqueror's Haki, and Luffy has also always persevered through battle. Like, most of the techniques he's learned through the heat of battle, and so now it's basically just a straight-up slugfest between Luffy and Kaido, all right? And like I said, so many other people involved here. Like, if Luffy, I mean, I'm okay with Luffy getting the final hit. I think most people are okay with the main character getting the final blow. But, like, all the people that's helped him up until now, you can't overlook that, right? Okay. And so that's how you really have to do it, I think. I think that's the best way of handling a villain like this, okay? You know, and if you're writing a story, or if you're doing something like that, and it's like, okay, I'm going to introduce this really powerful villain, they have to be, let me put it this way, they have to be more than just imposing and powerful for more than just a couple of chapters, because anybody can do that. It's just like, yes, I'm writing a story, and this really powerful vampire shows up, and he's, like, super powerful, and he's, like, Alucard, and he, like, defeats the main character in, like, one chapter. And it's like, okay. It's like, all right, well, the main character's got to have to face him and eventually win, right? So you better figure out some way, and just like, oh, well, he trains a little bit, and then he beats him. And just like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you got to have more than that going on there, okay? So there is a complaint that I do have right now with the fights that are going on, and the complaint is not with Kaido versus Luffy. I think, honestly, Kaido versus Luffy is being handled pretty good. If you have a contentious point with that, if you have another point, let me know. But the problem I actually do have is with Kid and Law versus Big Mom. And it's not a complaint that, like, Big Mom can be necessarily defeated by Kid and Law, you know, working together and pulling their strength and everything like that. It's just, I feel like they should have ran out of gas a long time ago before Big Mom would have. Because one of the most terrifying things about Yonko is that, yes, they are strong and they have powerful devil fruits, but also just their insane level of stamina and recovery powers. Kaido has, like, recovery, just like if you cut him, he'll stop bleeding after a couple of minutes. Even if it's a wound that's very severe that causes him pain, he can heal. And then Big Mom, of course, has the Soul Fruit. I did a whole video about this earlier. But, like, when Kid and Law... You know, keep in mind, Kid and Law already had a lot of fights before that, and then they fought against Kaido and Big Mom together with the Worst Generation, and then it was just Kid and Law versus Big Mom just by themselves, okay? And they were already pretty weakened from the fight. They took a decent number of hits, and then they're like, hey, we're going to go into our awakenings now. And they mentioned, like, we haven't had our awakenings for very long, and we haven't trained with them that much, and they take a ridiculous amount of stamina. And so the way they were talking about it seemed to imply that they only get, like, a one and done. You know, like, they're only able to use these awakenings once, and then that's it. They're done. And if it doesn't work, they're screwed. Well, they tried their techniques. You know, Law used K-Room, and then Kid used a sign, and it dealt damage to Big Mom, but it didn't take her down. And they've used their awakenings. Like, how many times has Law used K-Room up until now? He used it the first time when he first used it. And then he used, I think, Shock Villy a second time, and then Puncture Villy in the last chapter. So that's, like, at least 3 times right there, but there might have been more than that. Kids used a sign twice, plus making the bowl and the railgun involved in all that, right? So, like... It just seems like, where's all this stamina coming from? Plus, there was that scene where Big Mom just had them on the ground and just, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. And they were both, like, on the ground, like, passed out. And it's like, oh my god, they're done. They were already exhausted. And then they use their awakenings that they said even makes them more exhausted. And now they just got pumped full of lightning bolts. They have to be done, right? And it's just like they just kind of get back up and are like, all right. How many more awakenings do you have in you, kid? Oh, about 3 or 4. Yeah, I got about that too. It's like, where is this all coming from? Luffy at least had a break. Luffy had a break where he went down to the surface and he could eat some food and kind of recover his strength and sort of clear his head a little bit, right? That's why I think that fight works better, especially since Kaido was, like I said, fighting against Yamato while Luffy was recovering, so it wasn't even like Kaido was getting a break the same way Luffy was, right? But the case with Big Mom and Kid and Law, it's been a straight-up brawl, and they've kind of been doing nothing but taking damage after damage after damage with no breaks. And it's sort of like no matter how much damage they take, they could still just sort of just, like, get back up, and not just get back up, but get back up and pull off, like, a really powerful technique, which purportedly drains your stamina a lot. So that's the thing I have to complain about with the Big Mom fight right now. I think... Even if Oda would have just removed that line at the beginning, like, if we use these awakenings, it really drains our stamina, maybe just remove that, or just say the number, because that made me think, like, oh, okay, so you can only use this technique once. It's like, oh, no, we can use it about 3 or 4 times, maybe 5. I'd be like, oh, well, okay. It's just like, all right, like, if it said that at the beginning, I wouldn't have minded, but, like, yeah, or if they would have, like, opened the fight with their awakenings, because they were already pretty beat to hell by the beginning of when they started to use their awakenings, because the whole point of using the awakening was a, like, a last-ditch thing to begin with, but that's my complaint. Let me know what you guys think about that. I guess you could say that, like, oh, well, Law and Kid, you know, they're, you know, just as powerful. Roughly, they're on the same level as Luffy, and so, therefore, they would have, like, a similar stamina to Luffy. I thought about that originally, but I'm like, yeah, but Luffy still got a break, and they didn't. I feel like they should. And Big Mom has the soul power, so that's what makes her to be able to recover. Like, that makes sense. That was already established. I don't think it was ever really established that, probably not with Kid, maybe with Law, but, like, this, like, level of endurance to just get back up no matter how much damage they receive over and over again from a Yonko, nonetheless. But yeah, something else you got to keep in mind though is also the personalities, right? You know that you know, just in general, not just the personalities, but just like what they are. Because like Fairy Tail, that was a god, all right, and so you have like deities and stuff. The Yonko are not gods; they are not like eldritch beings from Ralea or whatever like that. They are still human. Well, maybe not human, because Kaido definitely has ancient giant blood in him, that we still don't know the whole dynamic of that, whether or not Kaido is like half ancient giant or like 1/8 ancient giant on his dad's side, and Big Mom probably has some giant blood in her just from how devastatingly strong she was even as a kid. But what I say is like mortal when I mean human, okay? They are mortals, okay? They have flesh and blood and bone and, you know, they organs, and if their organs are damaged, they would die. Like if somebody, like if Luffy just ripped out Kaido's heart, like Temple of Doom style and just, like, crushed it like Alucard did at the end of the fight with Anderson. Just crush his heart. Kaido would just, like, look at his empty chest cavity and just have a moment of, like, oh, I need a drink. Oh, and then he just crashes, right? So, you know, they're mortal beings. You know, they're ridiculously powerful, but they're still mortal beings. They're not invulnerable. They're not invincible. They're not immortal or anything like that, okay? So I think that's something to just keep in mind there. Now, in terms of the One Piece world, the planet they live on, yeah, essentially Kaido is like one of, if not the strongest, like, singular being on the whole face of the planet, but you know, I mean, he could still be bested if he takes enough damage. And I think the way Oda's been showcasing that with the weakening of the flame clouds and stuff, you know, and also Kaido's personality along with this, where he's sort of like a gatekeeper to the next Joy Boy. So in a sense, like, you know, Kaido knocks Luffy over the side of Onigashima, and he's like, well, he wasn't Joy Boy, but part of Kaido's like, I want him to sort of be, so, like, this prophecy can at least, like, be fulfilled. Like, you know, kind of like part of Kaido's like, I want to be bested so this prophecy can continue or whatever. And so Luffy comes back, and Kaido gets really excited about that. He gets very happy, because he's like, oh, maybe you are Joy Boy. Maybe you actually will fulfill this prophecy, and the fight begins anew. So yeah, overall, I would say Oda did a pretty good job with Kaido and Luffy's fight. The Big Mom fight, I have some complaints with that. I mean, it still looks cool, of course. Like, last chapter was insane. I'm just questioning, like, should they be able to do that? But, like, whatever, it looks cool, right? And there might be a serious drawback for these techniques, like, using their awakenings as many times as they did. There might be some serious kickback to that at the end of the fight. I have no idea what that'll be. They might have some injury or some wound that, like, maybe might stay with them for the rest of their lives, because how they push themselves this far in this fight to take down a Yonko, literally putting their lives on the line. If there's an okay drawback to that, then we'll go with that. Although also, I have seen that too. Okay, all right. Why not just discuss it now? If any other time to do it, it would be now. Okay. How do you feel about that dynamic? All right? Where the main character gets defeated by the main villain, but then comes back and defeats the main villain, but there's a drawback. You know, like, you know, the main character defeats the main villain, but he has a curse on him now that he has to go through another arc to break. You know, so it's sort of like, it's like, yeah, the hero defeated the main villain all by himself, maybe when he should have not have been able to, but he gets a downside for the rest of the story, so that makes it okay. Does it? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends what the drawback is. I guess it depends on how hard it is to overcome. I would say if it's a drawback, like, let's use that example. Let's say, you know, hero defeats the main villain, but he gets a curse on him from the main villain or something. Now, if that curse is something that can be broken in, like, just the next arc, like, oh no, I have a curse, and he goes to the next arc, and he's just like, can you remove this curse? And he's like, yeah, sure. All right, well, that was pointless. But if it's something that he literally has to carry with him or her for the rest of the entire story, and it's something that is encumbering that he could just never get rid of, okay, that's something there. And, you know, then you can maybe do that, right? So I guess it depends on how that's executed, right? Well, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think down below. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. Bottom line, if you're going to fight a Yonko, just bring a brick. It's the ultimate weapon. Later.